Welcome to the Cambridge Financial Podcast with Bert Salazar, CEO at Cambridge Financial Partners, LLC. This podcast is all about tax-preferred retirement planning, economics, financial risk management, and achieving a risk-free and successful financial life. Now, your host, Bert Salazar.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to another Cambridge podcast. I hope that all of you are having a great week. It's an exciting year so far, a lot of stuff happening out in the marketplace. Today, I'm very excited because we're going to be talking about 7702 plans, which is one of the major planning categories that I use with my clients when it comes to creating a tax-free retirement life. And 7702 is an area of the IRS Code that deals with tax planning, insurance, and so forth, and we'll be visiting on that today. Now, this case that I'm going to be sharing with you today, it's an actual case. It's for a husband and wife. He's 45, she's 43, and I've been working with these clients for the last 5 years, and about a year and a half ago, we put together a tax-free retirement plan for them that included shifting more of their contributions from their traditional 401k to a Roth 401k that was just made available in their retirement plan for the employer provided portion of it. So I guess an amendment was done at that time, and now employees have the ability to not only make contributions and take a pre-tax deduction today on a traditional 401k, but they also have the ability to take all or a portion of their contributions and shifting them over to a Roth 401k. Now, we've done enough talking about the difference between a traditional 401k and a Roth 401k, or a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. I think the main difference is, do you want to pay taxes on the seeds or do you want to pay taxes on the harvest? If you prefer to pay taxes on the harvest because you feel that taxes may be lower in the future, although that's contrary to popular beliefs and economic data and so forth, then obviously it makes sense for you to make contributions to a traditional IRA or a traditional 401k. Now, if you want to pay taxes on the seeds, then obviously you're better off making contributions either to a Roth 401k, a Roth IRA, or a 7702 plan, or a combination of all three. And the reason for that is that the contributions that you make into these plans, you have already paid taxes on them. The money grows on a tax-deferred basis, and then you can pull the money out on a tax-free basis for the rest of your life. Now, some of the benefits of the Roth and 7702 plans is the fact that they don't have to deal with the 70.5 required minimum distribution rules. So, you can allow these monies to continue to grow on a tax-preferred basis past the age of 70.5, and then you, the individual investor, the individual retiree, gets to dictate when you're going to start taking distributions. Now, in this case, for these clients, we had already maxed out their 401k, their Roth 401k, and we did do a split. We did continue to put money into their traditional 401k, but obviously I did some net present value calculations in order to make certain that at time of retirement, and the distribution is not going to exceed their standard deductions, credits, and so forth under the calculations and provisional income calculations that we do. So that way they can maximize their return without having to pay any additional taxes and or paying taxes on their Social Security benefits. So, it's a really win-win. So additionally to that, they made some contributions, and they're making contributions every year to a Roth IRA because their income allows them to do so, and they qualify for those contributions. But we're actually maxing out contributions to a 7702 plan. And that's primarily a life insurance contract that we use as a shell or as a shelter in order to inject a tremendous amount of money into those plans and have the majority of the money being put into the plan go toward the growth of the cash value for retirement purposes and the accumulated values, as opposed to some of that money just continuing to pay for the cost of insurance because the death benefit is very high. Now, when we do these types of plans for our clients, we do straddles on the 7702 plans. We may pick a 7702 plan, which is a term insurance in which we are providing maximum family protection at a point in time where the family needs it the most. So we may get, for example, a $2 million death benefit term policy, and we can get it for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Usually I try to go as long as I possibly can, and as long as the client can qualify for. Then we start to break down that term insurance and we start to do some conversions. Similar to where you would convert a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, we start to convert these term products to more efficient investments and retirement vehicles that will provide tax-preferred income in retirement to our clients without jeopardizing any other potential tax liabilities that they may have. We use primarily for those types of investment choices and straddles, we use either whole life insurance policies or we use fixed index annuities or a combination of both. In this situation, we used two policies. We used a whole life and we also used a fixed index universal life. The reason why we decided to choose two policies along with the existing term that they have is that the whole life policy is going to give us a guaranteed growth, a guaranteed interest rate. The only thing that's not guaranteed inside of those whole life contracts would be the dividends, but the companies that we use, have been paying dividends for the past 100 years, so we're not too worried about that. And then we're using the fixed index annuities, fixed index products or life insurance contracts in order to maximize the potential return based on market conditions. One of the main differences of fixed index life insurance contracts is that your principal is guaranteed. And then obviously you have the ability to invest in an index, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next few minutes. But it allows you to benefit in many, many ways, because if the market goes up, then you participate in a portion of the growth of that index or that lookalike index. And if the market goes down or loses money, then obviously you don't participate in the losses, so you do have the best of both worlds from that perspective. Getting right into the illustration on the fixed index life, we're using a $24,000 of annual contributions to this plan from ages 45 to age 64. So that would be a 20-year of contribution. The clients are maxing out on their Roth 401ks and IRAs, and they do have the disposable income to do that. Now, in this particular case, we actually got a contract issued for a male 45 years of age, preferred and non-smoker. So, that was a typical contract. And the death benefit in the first year is $519,000. Well, you would say, Bert, I can buy a term insurance policy of $519,000 and pay just a few $100s in order to secure that, yet you're putting $24,000 into the same death benefit. Now remember that we're using the fixed index life and we're using the whole life as a way to maximize the return on the retirement income distribution at some point in time in the future. Therefore, we're not using these contracts as death benefit contracts. We're using this primarily as a tax sheltering contract under 7702 of the IRS Code in order to be able to maximize the long-term return and distribution when it comes to these contracts. Now, remember, in 7702 plans, we're a lot more concerned about the distribution rate than the accumulation rate, so that's important. In this case, these clients are putting away $24,000 a year, and they're going to do so until the age of 64. So that's a total of $504,000 of contributions. At the age of 65, the death benefit has grown tremendously. It has compounded along the way. It actually has gone from $519,000 to $1,465,000 using a diversified portfolio and using historical index rate of return. And obviously you have to use the averages. Now there is a difference between the averages and the actual, but for illustration purposes, we have to use the averages. Now at age 65, these clients are now retired, but instead of taking distribution out of their 7702 plan or taking distributions out of their Roth IRAs or their Roth 401ks, they will actually be rolling over their Roth 401k to a Roth IRA because now they can control the distribution, the timing of the distribution out of the 7702 and the Roth 401k and Roth IRA contracts. Now, because they can only control the distribution out of the traditional 401ks or traditional IRAs between the ages of 59 and a half and 70 and a half, because prior to 59 and a half, you have premature distribution penalties of 10%. And then distributions that are not made after 70 and a half, you do have a required minimum distribution penalty of 50%. We have opted for these clients to start taking distribution out of their IRAs at age 65 in order to maintain their standard of living, along with some of the other investments. They own some real estate and rental properties, and they're going to be taking Social Security along the way. So we're going to allow the 7702 plans and also the Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks to continue to grow tax deferred, and then ultimately pulling the money out tax free, either at the age of 70, 75, 80, depending on financial circumstances and health concerns and so forth. So in this particular case, if the clients start pulling money out at age 70, remember they have made contributions of a little bit north of $500,000, $504,000 to be exact, and they're going to be able to pull out through what we call FIFO, which is first in, first out from an accounting standpoint. So they're going to start taking their money out up to the basis. In other words, the principal that they invested into the contract, they're going to be pulling the money out. And then once they start to get into the growth portion of that contract, in 7702, they have two choices. One, they can continue to pull that growth and pay income taxes depending on their tax rate at that point in time, or if their tax rate or taxes in the U.S. are very, very high at that point in time, which we more than likely foresee that happening, then they can immediately switch to loans in order to avoid any tax penalties from the IRS. So in this situation, we're pulling out $149,819 a year, totally tax-free through the FIFO techniques that I have just talked to you about. And they're going to start pulling that at age 70, and they're going to start taking $149,819 a year, tax-free, just out of their 7702 plan. And then obviously I ran this for taking money out for 20 years until age 85. Now, I could take a little bit less and make it to age 90, age 95, age 100. It doesn't matter. So the clients feel that by age 85, they're probably not going to be alive and so forth. But this is just for systematic purposes. So now the question is, well, we know that the clients have made contributions of $504,000 to this plan. I think the question is, how much money have they received during 20 years of distribution? And this is the key about the distribution rate, because at the end of the day, nobody cares what the score of a football game is at halftime. The only score that counts is the end of the game. And in this exercise, the clients made contribution of $504,000. They have been able to take out $1,865,000 $893,000, almost $1.9 million, almost 4 times the amount of contributions, and they were able to do that on a tax-free basis. Obviously, upon their death, then any remaining amounts, in this case, the remaining amount at age 85, based on the calculations that we have here, would be an additional $99,000 that would still go tax-free to the beneficiaries at that point in time when the client has passed away. So you're putting in $500,000 and you're generating almost $1.9 million of income. That's a tremendous value. Not only that, remember the $1.9 million is tax-free. So if you happen to be in a 25% or a 30% tax bracket, you have to be earning anywhere between $2.4 and $2.7 million in a taxable account in order to be able to net out $1.9 million. It's a tremendous opportunity that we use for our clients, especially those that are very much interested in creating a tax-free retirement plan. So think of it this way. We're taking money out of their IRAs and 401ks. We want to make certain that under provisional income calculations, we're mitigating any tax liability. So in our exercise, they're not going to pay any taxes on the distribution of those qualified plan contracts because they're being offset by their standard deductions, credits and exemptions based on the forecasted numbers that we have run. The other thing is they're taking money out of their Roth IRAs, and they're paying no federal income taxes. They're taking money out of their Roth 401ks, paying no federal income taxes, and they're taking money out of their Social Security benefits, no federal income taxes, and most important, they're taking an enormous amount of money out of their 7702 plan if they wish to do so and pay no federal income taxes. As a matter of fact, and this is something that I joke with my clients all the time, if they do it the right way, they can actually apply for Medicare and Medicaid and not have to worry about anything along those lines because they have very little, if any, to report on a taxable return. Now, as far as the beauty of the fixed index life contracts that we use many different companies because we're an independent firm, so we don't have access. We have access to all the major carriers in the marketplace, but we use a particular company that does a tremendous job on our behalf. This company has been around for many, many years. And we have a lot of different index opportunities that we can change every single year depending on market conditions. In this situation, we have chosen 5 different indexes, and we put 20% in each one of those indexes. We have an S&P 500 1 year with 100% participation. In another podcast, I'll go ahead and cover participation rates in these contracts and how participation and indexes work from a business perspective. We also chose an S&P 500 1 year with 140% participation rate. We also used a 3 year with 140 participation rate. And then we used a blended 1 year with 100% participation, which gives us a combination of many variable indexes inside this program. And last but not least, we used a Euro Tox 50 for 1 year with 100% participation rate. So it does give us the ability to diversify. Now, the one challenge with these products is that if there's a negative year, then obviously the clients are not going to lose any money. As a matter of fact, as your cash values grow, as your account value grows in these contracts, that becomes the new floor for any index rate. So if your account value grows from $100,000 in cash to $120,000, and then the following year the market drops 30%, your new bogey, your new floor is 120,000, not 100,000. So the beauty is that you get to participate in the upside potential. And by the way, there are a number of index annuities that will also do the same, except that index annuities are a different product altogether. But it does offer my investors safety, rate of return, a decent rate of return, and obviously liquidity from a business perspective, because any money that my clients wish to take out of this particular index contract or a whole life contract prior to age 59 and a half, they can do so without having to pay any taxes and or premature distribution penalties. More important, my clients can delay any distribution out of these contracts past the age of 70 and a half, and if they do so, they have no liability whatsoever and no tax ramifications from a required minimum distribution perspective. So these are tremendous contracts that many of my clients are maximizing. In this particular case, one of the things that we do very well with 7702 contracts is that we provide certain guaranteed features that are very critical in order to mitigate any retirement liabilities. You know that as people start to put money away toward retirement, there are a number of things that can happen along the way. And we try to always maximize the four major risks that our clients are facing every day, which is the risk of dying too soon, living too long, living with a disability, or living with eroding factors like taxes, inflations, and so forth. Well, what happens if you're making contributions to your IRA and your 401k? And you become disabled, you get hit by a car, and you're no longer able to work. Well, there's no one, you don't have any 401k protection or IRA protection where someone else is going to step in and continue to make contributions to your 401ks or your Roth 401ks or your IRAs or your Roth IRAs unless you do so yourself. So you are now disabled, and guess what? You're going to be broke for the rest of your life because no one else is doing that. Well, in these contracts, in these 7702 plans, we include riders that even if you become disabled, then obviously the contract itself will continue to fund itself until such time that you retire at age 65 years of age, or age 60 or age 70, depending on how you forecast and fund these contracts. Now, another area that these contracts provide that none of the other contracts available in the marketplace do is that they also provide protection for an accelerated death benefit in case of a chronic illness, critical or terminal illness, or even long-term care. So it does give you the ability to have a disability protection in these types of plans, and do so in a way that is tax favored to you and your family, because you're going to be able to use the death benefit if you become disabled in order to mitigate and to take care of the additional expenses if you happen to be in a nursing home or a nursing facility or hospice care or assisted living facility or even home health care. The only thing you would have to do, like in any type of disability contract, is you have to be able to meet 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, meaning that if you cannot perform 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, then you would actually qualify for that. The beauty of these contracts, as opposed to traditional long-term care policies, is that in a traditional long-term care policy, if you buy a policy at the age of 50 and you die in your sleep at the age of 85, all that premium that was paid for the previous 35 years and the opportunity cost of what the client could have done with those premiums had the client known that he or she would have died in their sleep and never had a need for long-term care, are actually lost forever. In these contracts, it works totally different. Because if you have a need for the long-term care, you're able to use a portion of the death benefit in order to provide that. And upon your death, whatever is left goes to your beneficiaries free of federal income taxes as well. If you died in your sleep and you have almost $1.5 million like in this contract, and you never used it, then obviously that would go tax-free to your beneficiaries as well. So someone will always get the benefits in these contracts, whether they happen to be fixed index universal life contracts or whole life contracts from a business perspective. The other thing that is very critical about this contract, and remember, we specialize in tax-free retirement planning, and when we do so, we pay a lot of attention to do things totally different than the majority of our competitors do in the marketplace. Most of the people that we compete against, although we feel very good and strong as to the fact that we're never contributing against or competing against anyone, is that the vast majority of advisors are going to try to give you the most amount of death benefit for the lowest premium possible. And by doing so, obviously, there's going to be very little growth in those contracts. We want to do totally the opposite. We want to give you the least amount of death benefit possible, because this is a retirement distribution plan. Remember, we already have life insurance covered through the 3-straddle program that we use in doing those things from a business perspective. But that's something very, very critical that you need to be aware of. But in this particular one, the one key feature that this company has that the vast majority of companies do not have is that they provide us with something called an income protection agreement. And what an income protection agreement does is that it allows the investors to dictate how they want the death benefit to be paid out at any point in time in the future. So for instance, in the case of my clients chose, obviously with my recommendations, and then we had a really good discussion about that. We made a decision to only distribute 50% of the death benefit in cash immediately to the survivors. And then the other 50% is going to be distributed to the survivors or to the beneficiaries in the contract, and it's able to be done obviously on an annuity basis. So many of my clients feel that if $1 million or $2 million is given to a surviving spouse or surviving children, they may not be able to manage that money the way that they themselves could have done. So there's always that fear of making certain financial mistakes. But by doing it this way, they're able to provide some immediate death benefit, depending on what they choose to do so, to the surviving spouse or the beneficiary, and then the rest of it can be paid either on a monthly basis or on an annual basis, depending on the circumstances. So, and by the way, by doing that, and you can choose, clients can choose when I want to pay out 50% up front, 25% up front. I want to pay out nothing up front and 100% as an annual annuity to be paid out. They have the ability to choose that, but because of the fact that a portion of that death benefit is going to be paid out as an annuity, the cost of insurance inside of these contracts are actually lower than any other contract available in the marketplace. What does that mean to you? Well, it basically means that if you have a lower cost of insurance, you have a much higher potential for growth inside of these contracts from a business standpoint. So that is something that is very, very critical, and this is why we use, whenever we use an index product, we use this company quite a bit because they're a very reputable firm. They've been around for over 100 years, and they do have tremendous crediting bonus and crediting potential, along with the reduction in internal cost of insurance due to the income protection rider. So these are things that are very, very critical for all of us on this podcast to understand. Always bear in mind that this planning that we do it's a type of planning that very few companies in the marketplace have the ability of doing. So again, it takes a lot of calculations, many a times doing net present value calculations, forecasting inflation rates, forecasting tax rates. We used at Cambridge, as you all know, we do three things very well primarily. We do tax planning, we do insurance planning, and then we do investments. And the vast majority of the investment that we do for our clients are tax-free investment vehicles that we provide for them. So again, obviously, I don't want to take any more of your time. As I always say in every single podcast that we do every week, our number one goal as a firm and my number one goal as an advisor is to get you to change the way that you see things. Because when you do change the way that you see things, the things that you see change. Again, thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Have a great day.